A few weeks back, I made a video on the top 5 worst campaign suggestions for Enlisted. In that video, I basically gave some of the worst campaigns that Enlisted could implement. Today, I'll be doing the opposite. In this video, we'll be talking about some of the best campaigns that Enlisted could ever implement. Like with the top 5 worst campaigns video, there are some things that are gonna be the same. Firstly, in order to make this list, the campaign must be something new to the table. For example, new factions, new equipment. Balancing must also be included too, so basically the opposite of the top 5 worst campaigns. That said, there are some good campaigns, and this top 5 list is just gonna cover 5, so I believe there are obviously gonna be a lot of other campaigns that you would like to see, and therefore I highly suggest that you comment down below to say which campaign is your best. But without further ado, let's get started with this video. But before we start, obviously this video has been possible for the friends at Discord, so without further ado, let's actually get started. In 5th place, we have the Winter War. So, if you don't know the Winter War was basically also known as the First Soviet-Finnish War, which was basically a war between Soviet Union and the Finns. And this war began with the Soviet invasion of Finland on the 30th of November 1939, and after 3 months of the outbreak of World War I, and this ended 3.5 months later with the Moscow Peace Treaty in 13th of March 1940. Despite numerical superiority, and especially in tanks and aircraft, the Soviet Union suffered severe casualties, which made little headway, and basically the Finns did have to capitulate, but the Soviets took enormous casualties due to that. But that said, the reason why the Winter War is on this list is because of a few things. One is because of the addition of Finland. Apparently, you see, for some reason, the Enlisted community is very fond towards a Finnish campaign or a Finnish faction. That said, people want to add Finland in, which obviously includes people like me. This is because Finland is an interesting faction to play. Its weapons are impressive, and its maps are quite interesting. Not only that, but the Winter War might be the perfect early war campaign that should focus on tactics, most notably ambush tactics, that if Enlisted would implement these tactics / mechanics, they're gonna be awesome. Sadly, this is where the issues begin, and for one, the weapons include a fine addition of Finnish weapons, but are also gonna include some weapons similar to Moscow, and for the Soviets in Normandy, that's just going to be a copy and paste, so no. Next is the map, and once again is similar to be Moscow, and finally are the tactics. And when I say tactics, I mean if Enlisted could even bother implementing them in. Case in point, Enlisted is not going to have an easy time implementing tactics. As a matter of fact, just imagine all the games that we have, all the campaigns that we have right now, and basically it's just gonna be a copy and paste of every other game. It's just gonna be cast bombing, slaughter, bombs. Basically, it's not gonna give you the feel of the Winter War, and that is my biggest issue. Honestly, the Winter War would work fine if it was a guerrilla war campaign, a hide-and-seek campaign, but unfortunately, I highly doubt that Enlisted will even implement those. To cap it all off, is the Winter War a good suggestion? Yes. Does it have a lot of potential? Yes. But can it quickly turn into the worst campaign in Enlisted? Sadly, the answer is yes, and that is why it's in 5th place. Next, we have the Syrian and Lebanon campaign, and the Syrian and Lebanon campaign, also known as Operation Exporter, was a British invasion of VC French Lebanon from the June to July of 1941 during the Second World War. The French had ceded autonomy to Syria in September 1936 with the right to remain armed forces and 2 airfields in the territory. And after the Iranian coup d'etat, the VC French just took back and basically was like, nope, you don't have that. So the British, and after the defeat of France, the British and the Indians, Abyssinian Lebanese, Palestine, Transjordan, Australia, Free France, and Czechoslovakia basically decided to go on a campaign in which we call Syria and Lebanon. So with that history out of the way, what makes this campaign so great off the bat is its factions. For one, we have the British Commonwealth, which is being added with its allies, most notably India and New Zealand, not to mention Australia. Opposing them are the VC French, and basically all of these factions are relatively new. The British are somewhat in Tunisia, but hey, it's fine. However, what makes this campaign so interesting is the maps. Yes, this is gonna be Tunisia 2.0, but Damascus is way different than Tunisia, not only in architecture, but also in nature. Syria offers a lot of different terrain. You can see mountains, flat plains, urban settlements, and honestly, these urban settlements are pretty interesting looking, I have to admit, especially if you look at the pictures of that time. Weapons are also going to be different, with emphasis on bolt-action rifles such as the Enfield and the Maz. And honestly, the only thing holding this campaign back is its size. Unlike Berlin, Tunisia, Normandy, and Moscow, not to mention Stalingrad, the Syrian Lebanon campaign was small. Only a few thousand troops ever participated, and only a few small skirmishes that occurred and a few hundred deaths, at most. That said, is it a good campaign? Yes. Does it have a good new factions? Yes, with the French, Indians, and the British, and the Australians. However, is Enlisted ever going to be thinking of this campaign? Probably not, so that is why it's on the top 4. Coming in third, we have the Greco-Italian War, and the Greco-Italian War was basically a war between the Kingdom of Italy and Greece from the 28th of October 1940 to the 23rd of April 1941. This local war began the Balkan campaign in World War II between the Axis and the Allies, which eventually included the Battle of Greece, the British and German involvement in the Battle of Crete, but before that it was just basically the Greco-Italian War. On the 10th of June 1940, Italy declared war on France and the United Kingdom. On September of 1940, Italy then invaded France, British Somaliland, and Egypt, of which only one was massively unsuccessful, which was Egypt. This was followed by a hostile push against Greece, which was accused of being allied with the British, and therefore this led to war. At first, the Italians were pretty successful, but after a few issues, like running into mountains and mountain terrain, the Greeks made a massive counterattack, which actually fought the Italians out of Greece and back into Italian Albania, which was captured in 1939. But that said, what makes this campaign stand out is its terrain. For those who don't know, the Greco-Italian War was mostly in the mountains, and that's why it was so hard for armored units to even push during that campaign. And as a matter of fact, it was so high in the mountains that you are most likely going to fall to death, freeze, or be crushed to death by an avalanche. But that said, a mountain campaign is something new Enlisted. Players will have to experience mountain warfare, something that I am personally looking forward to, especially since the series of Tannenberg Verdun has released the Assange, which is basically World War I, Austria-Hungary versus Italy, and I hopefully wish that Enlisted could give us a campaign for Greece and Italy, considering the fact that this one is in World War II. But that said, another thing that is something new are the factions. For starters, Italy is in Tunisia. However, more than half of the weapons aren't even Italian, 70% of the planes are even from the Real Aeronautica, and honestly, some of the tanks are just terrible. Which, honestly, let's be honest, the Greco-Italian War didn't see a lot of tanks, so having tanks in the Greco-Italian War is kind of funny. The Greco-Italian War should see L-33, something like that. Very small armored cars. I would like to see Italy being explored in this campaign as well, the Greco-Italian War, not to mention that the Greek army in World War II can be also highly explored. Both sides have interesting weapons, so no weapon overlaps like we have in, let's say, Berlin, Tunisia especially. But this campaign is also more significant compared to the Syrian campaign. Its significance was massive considering the fact that it was the campaign that saw Italy humiliated, Germany having to help them out, which delayed Operation Barbarossa, which in turn was the invasion of the Soviet Union. And honestly, I see this campaign doing very well, with not a lot of downsides and a massive amount of positives that Enlisted could bring to the table. But that said, that is basically the Greco-Italian War, one of the most favorite campaigns that I could ever suggest. Next we have the Cold War, and honestly, I don't even need to go over the history of this, but this is obviously a wide range of campaigns. The Cold War is going to be a wide range. There's not going to be one single campaign that you can put for the Cold War. Heck, it's even its own war, so we're talking about entire war here. Nevertheless, the Cold War can offer a whole lot of new stuff, and one campaign, I do mean campaigns, we have a huge range of campaigns, including the Congo Civil War, the invasion of Afghanistan, the Korean War, and most notably the Vietnam War. In terms of weapons, we have a whole range of new set of weapons, ranging from assault rifles to MBTs. Honestly, the choices are limited to describe some of the aspects of the Cold War. It'll just take even a few hours, so I believe Enlisted should move out. But I do believe Enlisted should move out of World War II, especially if after the Pacific has been implemented, because let's be honest, as time goes on, Enlisted is going to have less and less campaign specifications for World War II, because every time you do another campaign, it's just going to be a copy and paste. So they're probably going to move. I hopefully hope that they move on to another campaign in the Cold War, which I highly suggest. But that is probably going to be in the future, and this video is going to be slightly altered in the sense that a Cold War campaign could be way in the future. And most of this is thanks to the modern era event, the modern conflict. Like, I really personally like that event. I don't know about you guys, but it is one of my most favorite events. And however, the main reason is because of the need of a new content. As of right now, Enlisted only has time periods that is in World War II, which means, like I said, things such as limited campaigns. However, Cold War will open a new window for new campaigns. Honestly, I can't stress enough the amount of diversity that we need in Enlisted. We need a lot more factions, we need a lot more time zones, we need a lot more weapons, and other unique campaigns the better. The more unique campaigns, the better for Enlisted. So honestly, please, Enlisted, implement the Cold War, implement the Greco-Italian War. And speaking of implementing campaigns, we are on our top 1. And number 1 spot, we have the Sino-Japanese War. The Sino-Japanese War, which lasted from 1937 to 1945, was a military conflict waged between the Republic of China and the Empire of Japan. This made up the Chinese theater in the wider Pacific theater of the Second World War. And basically, there's gonna be a lot more history than I can talk about, but the reason why this is a great idea is because of the reason number 1, the factions are relatively balanced compared to what we see with the campaigns such as Iwo Jima and Okinawa. Case in point, the Americans are not gonna get Thompsons that easily just mow down the entire Japanese team, the Americans are not gonna get cast bombers that just basically destroy everything, and the Americans are not gonna get overpowered tanks that just one-shot Japanese tanks out of existence. Number 2, obviously, is the fact that Americans don't get M1 Grands, that's basically just mop up the entire Japanese team within seconds. Number 2, China is a massive area. Obviously, having a campaign in China can be easily having a lot of good and interesting terrain. Meaning that you can have urban, you can have hills, you can have flat plains, you basically have a lot. Number 3, having a Sino-Japanese campaign can increase the player count. For those who don't know, Enlisted has a pretty big Chinese community, given the fact that Enlisted's size, of course. That said, the more players the better, the more money. The more players equals the more money Enlisted can have, which means the less we have to worry about in terms of getting another Stalingrad campaign. Hopefully, at least. Because, you know, Enlisted might want as much money as they want, so. With that said, there are some of the reasons why a China, or a more specific, a Sino-Japanese War campaign should be Enlisted. And honestly, that is my top 1 because I really hope that is in. Honestly, I personally believe it's going to be a good representation of the Pacific, considering the fact that both sides are pretty much even. And yeah, it's really honestly an aspect of war that is really not known, but it is extremely bloody. But that said, this is pretty much the end of the video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and join the Discord, and I'll see you in the next one. Now before you leave, I would like to thank you very much for watching this video. I would be honored if you could like and subscribe to the channel. Remember, more videos are coming out, so it is a good idea to click on that notification button. Anyways, have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.